Okay, welcome everyone to the Lunch and Learn on the one thing that every healthy relationship allows for. There could be many things that we could talk about, but there's one thing, I think, especially with the cultures that we were raised in and the things that we continue to deal with, I think there is one key thing that keeps healthy relationships intact, and we'll get to that here in just a minute. Before I get to that, I want to share with you something I picked up yesterday. This is called Life's Clock, and you will be able to tell wherever you're at in life what time of the day that you are in, all right? So if you are in the room and you're 15 years old, it's 8:51 a.m. If you are 20, it's 11:08 a.m. If you are 25 years old, it is 12:25 p.m. If you are 30, it's 1:25. If you are 35, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're 40, it's 4:16. If you are 45, it's 5:43 p.m. If you are 50, it's 10 till 7 in the evening, which means you're kind of getting ready to call it a day, huh? And if you're 60, it's 10:11 p.m. And if you are 70 plus, you're somewhere approaching midnight. So I don't know exactly how that was figured, but it proves a pretty good point. Time is moving along, and the one thing that we need to continue to work on to stay healthy is our relationships. Because if our relationships are unhealthy, it affects every other part of our life. So I want to look at the one thing that I feel every healthy relationship allows for. And if we had more time, I'd have popcorn answers, but we got to cut to the chase. So I'll just tell you that it is confrontation. The one thing every healthy relationship allows for is confrontation. I would say next to public speaking, the thing that most people look to avoid is confrontation. The cultures, like I said, that we grew up in, most of us that we grew up in, we learned early and often that confrontation is one of the 4 C cuss words, along with conflict, correction, it's confrontation, and can't think of the other one offhand. Criticism. Criticism is the other one. So we look at this usually in a negative sense. So like I said, it's something that we've tried to avoid. Confrontation often produces 3 things. It often produces either fight, flight, or freeze. So when confrontation happens, generally we respond with one of those things: fight, flight, or freeze. In other words, we become extra loud and defensive, or we become readily invisible. Confrontation happens, I'm out of there. I become invisible, or we shut down and we freeze. We become paralyzed, not knowing what to do, so we do nothing. If you've ever been around someone who doesn't know what to do, so they do nothing, you know how frustrating that can be. And when we do that to others, it's very, very frustrating, because nothing happens and nothing moves forward. So generally, we either ramp up verbally or we shut down emotionally. When we think of confrontation, generally we do one of those 2 things. And the truth is this: whether as a spouse, as a parent, as a leader, as a coworker, the one truth that we're looking at today is whatever we don't confront, we allow. Think about that. If I'm parenting, whatever I don't confront, I allow. If I don't have the courage to address it or confront it, or if I'm with a coworker and I can't confront it, I'm just saying, you just continue to go ahead with that behavior, because I'm, for whatever reason, I'm not going to confront it. Okay? Joel, come on up. So I want us to look at this a little bit. I think healthy and successful confrontation, you could put this in your notes somewhere. To me, it makes sense to look right in the middle of that word, and the word is front. And to me, it's just becoming front to front. or face to face. So when we think of confrontation, it doesn't have to be, a real scary word, because the reality is that we just need to come front to front. So if Joel and I, if there's an issue that we need to address and that we need to take care of, generally what we do is, I know I need to talk to Joel about this, and I know it's there. But man, if I go ahead and talk to him, he might not like me, or I might not say it right, or all these excuses come. And so what I'll do is, he is like facing this way, and I might even just talk about him, but I'll talk about him and the situation behind his back, right? I might go to one of you and talk to you about Joel. It's like, he just doesn't listen. I don't know what I just don't know. How am I going to do this? He's probably not going to receive it anyway. So I will come around this way, and I will come around this way, not even giving him a chance. I'll just talk behind his back. And then sometimes when there's confrontation, now he wants to go ahead and address me, and I'll just give him the cold shoulder. That's what this is right here, right? And so I'm not going to face him. I'm just going to kind of be within earshot, but I'm not going to give him my full person. Confrontation is simply this. It's simply, there he is. I need to talk to him face to face, front to front. Let's settle this. Let's take care of it. That's all I need you for. Thank you. So, does that make sense? That is, in essence, what confrontation is. It's us being willing to go front to front. I'm not hiding anything. I'm going to address this. Everything else that's going on, I'm going to put my blinders on. I'm going to filter out everything else, and we're going to figure this thing out. Okay? It doesn't have to be that cuss word or feel like a cuss word. It can be very healthy and very beneficial. I want to look, first of all, at a couple things that most of us in here are very good at. We're experts at it. Most of us are very good at unhealthy confrontation, so I just kind of want to unpack that and then get to the good stuff. So the one thing that we find ourselves doing often when it comes to confrontation is we find ourselves confronting to win. Okay, so an unhealthy way to confront is we confront to win. We exert the dominance of our position and we pull rank because we want to get our way. Bad parents do this. It's bad parenting. Bad leadership will do this. Where I use my position and I use my title, and I'm saying, well, hey, you just have to deal with it. This is how it is. And I come in, and I would say this is probably the laziest way of leadership. This is the laziest way of going about it, because I'm bringing it to you, and I'm confronting because I'm going to win you over to my point. And if I'm not going to convince you with my words, I'm going to convince you with my power. Very, very unhealthy. Okay? So when the words, because I said so, when that's the reason behind our explanation, we're not shining at our brightest. Okay? So because I said so, because that's the way it is. So when we confront to win, we're actually losing. Secondly, we're acting like the issue doesn't exist. The culture I grew up in, the culture a lot of us grew up in, this was the unhealthy choice on the menu, so to speak. Let's just act like the issue doesn't exist. I've said many times that sweeping things under the rug eventually ruins the floor. Okay, you can pick up that rug and keep sweeping under, and you can't see it, but it's underneath there, and every time you step on that rug, you're harming the floor. And eventually, we have to repair that floor. So when we act like the issue doesn't exist, we can't hope it goes away, because it never does. We can't hope by not addressing it, it's not going to go away. It only grows animosity, and what it does is it slowly erodes the relationship. If I know I need to talk to Joel about what we need to talk about, but I keep avoiding it, and I keep giving myself excuses not to do it, eventually our relationship is not going to get any stronger. So that's a big one. Number 3 is complaining and becoming the victim. Very unhealthy in relationships. In playing the victim, what I found is we're often seeking a personal cure for the conflict at hand. When I consistently play the victim card, what I'm trying to do is self-soothe. I'm trying to give myself a reason, a cure, and just realize that, well, you know, this has nothing to do with me. It's always about them. And when we play the victim, everyone loses within that. So here we don't take responsibility. We don't own our part of it. When I play the victim, I just irritate and annoy everyone else around me. Okay? It might even be your fault. And I'm going to probably think that maybe it is your fault, the reason why we have to have this confrontation. But as a leader, as a person who takes responsibility, I also need to take responsibility to understand what you're talking about. Does that make sense? I don't have to agree. I have to take time to understand. And then the fourth thing is keeping score. Extremely detrimental. John Maxwell says it this way. He says that people who keep a record of wrongs can never start over with a clean slate. That one hit me. When we spend our time keeping a record of wrongs, we can never start over with a clean slate. Because there's no place on the paper to start over. Because I'm making sure I'm keeping track of everything that annoys me about you. Keeping score will always make us feel like we're losing. You'll never, ever feel like you're making progress as long as you're keeping score. And it also means we're only happy when we win. So, enough with that. So, the truth is that healthy relationships allow for healthy confrontation. The healthiest relationships that I've ever been a part of, that I've ever helped counsel through, that I've helped people walk through issues, my own personal life, the healthiest relationships I have allow for healthy confrontation. So how can we display a mature and secure presence, and how can we model this healthy confrontation? Number one, we need to care enough to confront. We need to confront a person in a way to care about that person. It's most productive to go into a confrontation keeping their interests in mind. We already know how we feel about the issue. And if the purpose is for me to go into that situation and to convince you how I feel about the issue, it's not going to work. But if I care enough to confront, and I make it about you, and I really want to hear what's going on and why you're having this response, I'm going to make progress. Interesting thing with this too, maybe with that other person, maybe we don't want them to continue to be misunderstood. I've been in those situations where it's like, okay, you know, and this is how this works. People will say, well, somebody needs to talk to them, right? Somebody needs to, like, the way they come across, they just, like, I don't think they get it. So somebody needs to be able to go and to say, look, I'm not coming against you personally. This is that confrontation. I care a lot about you. I'm not sure that you know how you come across. When you say what you did, when that happened, you have to understand that people are hearing you this way. Now, you're not feeling that when you talk it out, but this is how they're hearing you. That's a confrontation. And if you are going about your worlds doing that, and I know that's what's going on, and everyone's saying somebody should talk to that guy, like, it's not working. I have to be able to come in love and say, hey, I care enough about you. I can't force you to change, but just so you know. Sometimes they don't have the right information, and sometimes they're not making the proper judgments. And so we need to confront with the purpose of clarifying what's going on. And you can maybe write this down too, but I think clarity is the number one goal of confrontation. It is. We don't confront to be bullies. We don't confront to have a power trip. We confront so that clarity can happen, so that we're clear on what we need to do and what the next steps are. Number two, you will know that you are in a healthy relationship when you can confront and when you can address it quickly, but not hurry. We need to be able to address it quickly, Nip it in the bud, so to speak, but don't hurry. When conflict arises, our nature is to avoid it. The reality is that when we put it off, though, the situation does typically get worse. So we put it off, it gets worse. At the same time, we can't just barrel in with thunder and lightning. Okay? Some people love confrontation a little too much, right? They're like, okay, another victim to get in there. We can't just barrel in and use our knowledge or use our position and just go in with thunder and lightning and bulldoze people. We need to address it quickly, but don't hurry through the conversation. And this is really cool. If we can get to the place where we address it quickly, we don't let it fester, we don't let it get infected, but we address it, but then in addressing it, we walk and through the conversation, we patiently progress through the conversation, right? We patiently progress with them through it and make sure that they have a full understanding of what's going on. That is really, really cool. Because usually in that time, you're at least giving them an opportunity to respond a lot better. If we just barrel in, we're going to be looked upon as a bully. We'll rush the process, and we probably shouldn't have confronted it in the first place if we're going to do that. Number 3, we need to first seek understanding, not agreement. A lot of times with confrontation, we think, well, we got to get in there, we have to get to an agreement so we can move on. That's not the first thing to seek out. The first thing to seek out is understanding. It's been said that the person who gives an opinion before understanding is human, but the person who gives a judgment before they understand is a fool. So when we go in and lambast with our judgments and we don't even take the time to understand, but we just go in with our judgments and say, this has happened and this has happened and this is enough of this and blah, 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 and we don't even know the whole situation, that confrontation is going to backfire. Okay? So we need to be willing to first seek understanding, not agreement. I think healthy agreement comes only after a thorough understanding happens between both parties. The interesting thing with confrontation, too, is that we need to understand that sometimes you never get to agreement. Sometimes, so the aim can't be agreement because sometimes we agree to disagree, right? And if you can agree to disagree with someone and still respect them and still have a great relationship, that is a healthy relationship. We are not going to agree on everything, okay? I think disagreement does not have to equal rejection. A lot of times we feel like it does, but it doesn't have to. The key with this one is engaging in this process without emotional heat or without bitterness. And then the last one is huge with confrontation. We need to establish an action plan. Be sure the plan is written down. Be sure it clearly identifies the issue, and then be sure that it spells out concrete steps that you're going to take. So let's say it's a work situation. Let's not just leave the situation feeling kind of, well, now what do we do with this? If you are leading that confrontation, if you're leading that situation, come out of it with clarity. Write it down, clearly identify what needs to happen. And the action plan also, I think, should include a commitment by both parties to either put this thing on pause or agree that, okay, now we're done with this. Okay? We're going to put it to rest. So either put it on pause or put it to rest. In the years that I've done marriage counseling and things like that, a lot of times with couples, it was one of those things where a lot of times we're not going to resolve this. It's already 1 a.m. and we just keep going at it. We're not going to resolve this. So we're going to put it on pause and we're going to revisit it tomorrow at 6 p.m. after work. Something like that. So we either have to agree that we're going to continue this or we have it settled now and we're not going to bring this up anymore. Okay? So, but both parties have to agree to that. So again, whatever we don't confront, we allow. Solomon, in all of his wisdom, he said this. He said, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So in our confronting, we need to be gentle yet firm. Gentle yet firm. We have to have the courage to be firm. Don't go in with a harsh word. 3 questions that will help us whenever there's an issue. I would encourage you to write these down. These have helped me tremendously over the years. So if there's an issue that needs to be confronted, ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, why did this happen? The second question is, what can we do about it? And the third question is, how will we resolve it? Why did this happen? What can we do about it? How will we resolve it? Those 3 questions are kind of a little bit of a secret sauce in how to handle confrontation and how to make sure, in a healthy way, and how to make sure that it's beneficial for both parties. The thing I'll leave you with is a really good quote. I'm not sure who said this, but I think it's good. We must make a choice to confront or things will never change. If you want those same issues to continue to linger on in your relationships, the biggest way to let them to continue to linger on is to not confront them. And if we're all honest, this confrontation, this confronting usually starts with you and I looking in the mirror first, making sure that we have the right motives, that we're doing the right thing and entering the confrontation.